A stinker in game seven at OKC, which I kind of had a vibe. In fact, I'm surprised it went seven. Gordon's injury, even in the winning games, I felt like Jokic was just running out of gas. Jamal Murray provided very little. Jason Timpf hoops tonight. Yeah, I felt like, they played their ass off early, but, from Caruso on Jokic to Murray's absence. I mean, Case and Wallace is hitting shots. Just like, okay, it's not going to be their day. I think I will say this. I mean, Oklahoma City was favored. I think we both liked them. I thought it would be a really good series. It was. I do think you kind of have to sort of. I mean, Christian Brown played a lot better. I think you do have to examine Jamal Murray. I just think in too many big games he has injuries. In too many big games, Jason, I just don't. I just don't feel like I'm getting. He was never hyper athletic anyway. I don't know. I think it's time to shuffle the deck. I would, if it was me, I would keep Gordon, Brown, for his energy. I would keep, Jokic, obviously. I'd move anything else. I'd take any call. How far off am I?
Well, I think that there's certainly going to be a pivot coming. I think that Michael Porter Jr. is the kind of player that I think they'll be almost certainly looking to move.
Yeah.
They used to need him desperately as a weak side spacer in the context of Aaron Gordon as a non-shooter. But now with
Yeah.
Aaron Gordon really coming together as just a super well-rounded, versatile role player on both ends of the floor, I think they can actually look to target more of a defensive-minded wing at that position instead of a guy like Michael Porter Jr., who's more of a shooter. I would
Yeah.
stick with Jamal because I think there's a lot of value specifically with the continuity with him in that matchup. This is a guy who's played two-man game with Jokic for over a half decade. And he just has
Yeah.
such a flow with him. I think there's a conversation to be had with Jamal as it pertains to his conditioning. And it's routine now that he comes into camp out of shape and he basically
Yeah.
plays his way into shape. And then suddenly, right before the All-Star break, he kind of starts to come together, and then he'll look good in the playoffs, just not as consistently good as he can be. I mean, Colin, as bad as he was tonight, he was absolutely brilliant in game six. But it's one of
Yeah.
those things where I think internally they're going to need more out of Jamal, but I certainly think a pivot's coming. I think the pivot's going to center around a Michael Porter Jr. trade. That's the kind of piece that they need to upgrade. I think Jamal, I think Christian Brown, I think Aaron Gordon, I think Nikola Jokic. I think that's a championship four. I just think they need someone more along the lines of like a Herb Jones, Jaden McDaniels type at the three than they need a Michael Porter Jr. They need to anchor this group with defense. They need to give themselves more athleticism and pop. You could feel the difference in the athleticism in this, especially in Game Seven tonight, like or today. Like they're in that beginning of the game is so funny on the broadcast. They show all the difference in experience. All those
Yeah.
Nuggets
Yeah.
have played in like 20 game sevens combined, and there's like three on the OKC side. And they start the game, and Denver goes up 21-10, and it literally
Yep.
feels like a classic young guy game seven. But then right at the end of the first quarter, Alex Caruso checks in. They really up their ball pressure, and man, did the wheels come off. It
Yeah.
completely came off from there, and they just were never able to regain control. And even Jokic, to your point, especially in that late second quarter run that OKC went on right before the half, he
Yeah.
just looked physically overwhelmed by how
Gassed.
physical their guards are.
Sorry to interrupt this great video, but please remember to like and subscribe. Thank you. Now back to the video. Yeah, no, I mean it was like a 14-2 run, and they were getting up the floor, and I think, I've said this before. I think the first round should be 5 games. I think that's what it was in MJ's era, and I think the pace is faster. I think the athletes are bigger and stronger. I don't like the NFL going to 18 games eventually. I think we should. I don't. That doesn't do it for me, because I think athletes now they're training year round. You ask more, bodies break down. But I think we're going to end up, we're ending up with really good coaching staffs with OKC, Minnesota, Indiana, and the Knicks. That's what we're ending up with. And I think we're ending up with, I mean, between Halliburton and Jaylen Brunson and SGA and, I mean, Ant, obviously, I feel like the Eastern Conference feels much different than the Western Conference. In the Western Conference, I just love the construct of the rosters. I mean, if you look at Minnesota, it should not be this good. Rudy Gobert's an offensive whole at times. Conley's 6 years past his prime. Ant is a superstar, a developing superstar. Julius Randle was never a good playoff performer and struggled the first month or two with the T-Wolves. But I see this roster, I see the athleticism, I see the size. Great GM came from Denver, and I see a staff that just gets everything out of its players, that like coaches them hard. It's like almost like Spoelstra coaches them hard, has no problem barking, but I feel like I'm getting every player's best game. And with Oklahoma City, like Sam Presti, I feel again, I just think there's just so much energy and so many guys that can do high-end rotational players. So in the West, you can touch on this. I think it's really good coaching. Obviously, two of the top 4 or 5 stars in Ant SGA, but I think it's really good coaching, really good GMing, really nice rosters with a variety of options to throw at teams. Big energy, youth, and just there's so many levers for both coaches to pull in the West.
Yeah, depth is the recurring theme that I see for sure, in the sense that the Pacers have 3, 4, 5 guys that they lean on in substantial roles off the bench. Same with Oklahoma City. Same with Minnesota. You're getting Naz Reid, Dante DiVincenzo, Nickeil Alexander-Walker. These teams just have wave after wave of talent. And even with the Knicks, like the Knicks don't have the depth in terms of like playing an 8 or 9 man rotation. But Mitchell Robinson is like a legit sixth starter for
Yeah,
them. And so is Deuce
yeah.
McBride. I think Deuce McBride's a very good backup guard. And so I think that's part of it. Having like a rock solid 7 that you can count on, I think makes a big deal. I mean, to your point, Colin, literally we got into the start of the second quarter and David Adelman inexplicably leaves Jokic and Murray off the court at the same time. And we got
Yeah.
to see a little bit of Denver's bench there for a minute. It wasn't pretty. And so I
No.
think I think depth is a significant part of it. There is an interesting trend, Colin, towards offense in late playoff success. 2 years ago, Denver is the first team that's not a defending champion that was not a top 10 defense to win the title. Last year, we had 3 top 10 offenses, 2 top 10 defenses. This year, all 4 teams in the Final Four are top 10 offenses, but only Oklahoma City and Minnesota are top 10 defenses, which I find really fascinating. The offensive side of the floor is becoming more important as the coaching staffs and the defensive schematics have made it so that groups like that Denver group can actually defend pretty well when they're engaged and they're playing hard. And so what's really becoming important is, do you have the scoring talent to actually put the ball in the basket in these tight competitive environments?
You know what's interesting? There's a real change in the league, and I think it's one Adam Silver, the commissioner, wanted. I don't think it's a coincidence that Halliburton and Brunson are high IQ, EQ floor generals. 5 years ago it was let's get 3 really good players together, and I think Adam Silver looked at that and just thought that's not what we want here. Like that's just eliminating a half to 60 to 70% of the teams, and you're getting the basketball that Adam Silver wanted: physical playoff basketball, no dynasties, with multiple aprons. You can't have a stacked roster. Even Boston, they cheated the code a little bit for a year, and then they looked really old this year. Like once we move off probably Porzingis or a Horford or a Drew Holiday, Boston's going to face what everybody else does, right? With new ownership. So I think it's what the league wanted, and I got to tell you what I really like about it. I love nothing against wings, MJ and Kobe, but I like point guard driven basketball. I love smart point guard play. I always love Chris Paul, where everybody gets touches. Um, I went golfing this morning very early in Burbs in Chicago, and we started talking about Jalen Brunson, and we were all sports fans, and we were all like, "Yeah, I watched them at Villanova. I didn't see that. I watched them at Dallas. I didn't see that." But I think you know how you and I talked about certain players when the league went 3 heavy, guys like Dwight Howard or Tristan Thompson. It's like, man, you can't have them on the floor. It's almost like Adam Silver has moved basketball into Brunson and Halliburton, which is it's not you're not going to have you're going to have these rosters that aren't all star studded. They're rotational players, they're role players. So intelligence, everybody getting touches, pacing becomes huge. Like I look at Brunson now and I'm like, I feel like the league's kind of built for him and Halliburton. It's 28 points isn't necessary. It's when you don't have a top heavy roster, Jason, and you actually have seven guys that can play eight guys, and you get them all touches. I don't know. I watch the league and I don't feel like the Knicks and the Pacers are outliers. I'm like, no, like they're my favorite two teams right now in the league to watch.
I think you're absolutely onto something here, Colin. I think what we're seeing is offensive minded stars that are able to create advantages, and then these deep rosters of talent living off of that advantage. Essentially, like as the game has modernized, there's a lot of really similar jobs on offense. Like a backdoor cut is a backdoor cut, regardless of what type of athlete you are. If you're attacking a closeout, it's the same for the Pacers as it is for the Knicks, as it is for the Nuggets. If you're making reads in a 4-on-3, slipping out of a ball screen because they put two on Brunson or they put two on Halliburton, it's the same reads in Golden State as it is in Indiana, as it is in New York. And so what happens is you can, as a GM, accumulate these types of talent, these two-way players that can attack closeouts, make reads, play defense,
Yep.
all that kind of stuff. And all it becomes is, do you have a guy, a singular force that can constantly bring two to the ball or make the right reads to generate that first closeout? And then from there, it's a flow sport. It's all about the aggregate talent on the floor capitalizing on that advantage. But Tyrese Halliburton is succeeding because he's one of the best advantage creators in basketball. Brunson does it a little bit more of a lean towards scoring, but I mean,
Yep.
keep an eye on this series. In this matchup in particular, the Pacers have been able to hold Brunson's scoring down a little bit by constantly putting two on the ball. This will be a series where we're going to see a lot of OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges and Josh Hart looking to make plays. It is a very interesting directional change for the league in this offensive
Yeah.
theme that we're talking about. This is why guys like Luka are so valuable. This is why guys like Nikola Jokic are so valuable. When you have somebody that's like, got to throw multiple pieces at this guy, all of a sudden there these really achievable roles appear for role players. And those are the kinds of guys that good GMs are picking up all over the league. To Sam Presti's credit, he's got like 8 of these dudes that can defend multiple positions, knock down a catch and shoot three, drive a closeout, make a read, or grab a rebound. And so as a result, they just come flying in. It's like, good job. You finished the J-Dub and Dort phase. Here comes
Yeah.
Kason Wallace and Alex Caruso for your next shift. Have fun with that. They might actually be
Yeah.
better at it.
Yeah, no, I like. I mean, I don't think I think the league would do better if it's OKC. Well, I mean, actually, Ant Edwards probably Ant against the Knicks would be really good to have Ant
Mm.
go for 42 in the Garden. Um, it's fans always root for the home team. So when the Knicks win, the fans are going to say, "We told you so." I think a really fascinating team, though, is the one that lost. And we see this a lot in the NBA, the end of dynasties. That's not the case because the Celtics were never a dynasty. But I do feel like I felt when Denver won, I thought, oh, here come the Spurs. And then they weren't. And then I thought when the Celtics won, I thought it was going to be like a 3-year run. And then they weren't. And next year, obviously, without Tatum. Tatum is fine if he misses 4 games, 2 games. When he misses the season, it's just a different ball game because Jaylen Brown
Mm.
can be a little hot and cold offensively. Boston, and again, there's so many smart front offices in the NBA. We both kind of agree they're going to get rid of some kind of expensive older guys. Do you think they'll go big game hunting in Boston?
I don't think they'll go big game hunting right away. I think it's got to be more of a big picture 2-year kind of window to make this sort of transition. Because like essentially you could take all of next year, you own your own draft pick. So like you could be bad and that could lead into more talent coming in through the draft. There's the ability to offload like older role players in hopes of bringing back younger role players. So like flip a Drew Holiday to a team that needs a better player right away. Like for instance, like I would be calling Dallas and I would see what I could get for Drew Holiday. Like, okay, we need a center. So they've got Daniel Gafford and PJ Washington. They Cooper Flagg is literally going to be playing the forward next to Anthony Davis, next to Derek Lively. Maybe we can turn Drew Holiday into PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford. Now I got a 4 and a 5 that could both start in this league that are
Yeah.
26 years old instead of 34 years old like Drew Holiday is. I think those are the kinds of moves they'll be looking to make. And then it's essentially going to be just asset accumulation in hopes of being able to pivot around Jason Tatum in that following season. But this is the challenge, Colin. I mean, the Raptors win, they lose Kawhi, then they end up losing the next season, right? The Lakers win, but then Anthony Davis and LeBron get hurt. They make a tweak, they can't repeat. The Bucks, they don't pay PJ Tucker, Chris Middleton gets hurt, they can't repeat. The
Yeah.
Warriors, they Jordan Poole and Andrew Wiggins both fall back to what they're normally like. The Nuggets, they can't pay Bruce Brown and they can't pay Kentavious Caldwell Pope. Suddenly they are second tier contender. The Celtics, these windows look long, but OKC is going to have to pay all these guys. And it's
Right.
only a matter of time before suddenly it's Shea and J Dub and some lesser level talent around them. And all
Well,
of a sudden it's going to be a harder game.
here's something else, and this is another shift, which I think is great for basketball. I think with the NIL, more players will stay an extra year in college or go to
Mm,
college. So I do think when they enter the league, they're more ready to play. I mean, we've had a lot of Jalen Greens over the last 10 years, like guys that are talented, but you just see in 3 years, like get some polish. But if you play, for Bill Self or Hurley for even 1 year and maybe two, I'm not saying you're a Villanova guy, but you're ready to play in the league. And I do think the growth and explosion of NIL money actually helps the NBA. I think Adam Silver's always known there's it's a little bit of a liability. First of all, you want more tape on a player, so fewer players are busts. Like NFL GMs have such an advantage. They got 3 and 4 years of tape, and you're kind of guessing because college basketball coaches often control the offense. So you're like, is he a good decision maker? What am I getting? But you're going to get a couple years of tape. So you have a better evaluation, and I think you're going to get more mature players. They're just more refined because I think college coaching and the college environment, we talked about this March Madness, conference championships, those are intense NBA feeling like environments. So I actually think basketball is in a really good place. I think baseball right now is so lopsided, where it's just like Dodgers are throwing out like 8 all-star level players. They're going through massive injuries and it doesn't matter. But I think basketball is in a really good place. And I think if when you start looking at the market, I don't think markets have the levers they used to. Like I like watching OKC play. I'm fine with it. And I've been kind of market sensitive in my life. As a broadcaster, I always kind of looked for the bigger, more interesting markets, but I don't know. I like watching Indiana. I like OKC. I don't have a problem with. So I think the league would, we all know if New York faced Ant, it would probably be the win.